Darkest Hour is directed by Joe Wright and it stars Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill. And this film is basically about Winston Churchill, how he gets elected, why he gets elected, and it basically highlights some of the things he does during his time as Prime Minister. And Gary Oldman has, of course, been sort of the main reason people are talking about this film. And after seeing Darkest Hour, I have to say that this is a very, very well made film, and it has some really, really great things aside from Gary Oldman's great performance, which we'll talk about in just a bit. But here, the directing by Joe Wright is really, really impressive. I've never seen any of Joe Wright's previous work. I've heard about the sort of famous long take scene in Atonement, which apparently is a very good film. I have that on my watch list. I have not yet watched it. But I was really, really impressed by Darkest Hour, and he's really made an impression on me as a filmmaker, because there are some really, really creative choices that he makes in this film, and the cinematography is incredible. And I have to say that it really does deserve its Best Cinematography nomination, although we know who's gonna win. But it is a very well shot film, and the camera work here is really crazy for, you know, a period piece, because with these period pieces, you tend to go for more sort of subtle camera work. So on a technical level, I would say Darkest Hour is very impressive, and Joe Wright as a filmmaker has made a really good first impression for me. I really like this guy. Now we have to talk about Gary Oldman's performance. I think we can all agree that Gary Oldman loses himself in this role and just becomes Winston Churchill. I would not be surprised if some people see him as sort of the definitive movie version of Winston Churchill. Do I think he's going to win the Oscar? Yeah, I guess so. Does he deserve it? Yes, of course he does. He's Gary Oldman, one of the most underrated actors, underappreciated actors in Hollywood. He's just a legend, right? He's played some of our favorite characters, and we don't even know that that's him, right? Sirius Black and Jim Gordon and all the rest of them. So I really do think Gary Oldman deserves this Oscar, and this is a great performance by him, one of his best. And I think that most people see Churchill as this really posh guy who doesn't really interact with, you know, with the common people. And one of my favorite scenes that takes place towards the end is when he goes on the subway and he starts talking to people and he starts interacting with them and sort of being among the people. And although that may not be factually accurate, I do think that that was sort of a wise addition to the film, because it kind of humanized the character a bit more and made him seem a bit more relatable, which I liked. The rest of the performances are great. Lily James is in this film, and she's great, and also Kristen Scott Thomas, she's great in this film. I would say that my one problem with this film isn't really a problem, but it's the fact that these sort of British period pieces about some guy in power who has to prove himself because people don't think he's good enough, we've already seen so many of these films done. And I think that Darkest Hour sort of goes above them by being really impressive in terms of the performance and the filmmaking, and it does. But at the end of the day, it's still just another one of these stories that we've seen hundreds of times. And I just feel like with this year, we have stuff like Lady Bird, stuff like Get Out, stuff like Three Billboards that we just haven't seen before, stuff like Shape of Water. And so when you have a film like this that is so well made and so well acted, but it's still so generic and it still just feels like an Oscar bait film, I just don't think that this film necessarily deserves that Best Picture nomination, kind of like The Post. I just feel like the Oscars should be acknowledging films that are a little bit different and films that are unique, like The Florida Project, like Blade Runner 2049. But still, I think that Darkest Hour is a very well made film, very well directed, very well shot, very well acted, and I'm going to give it a B+. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Please stay tuned for my review for Phantom Thread, which is the last film in my series of Oscar reviews. And of course, I will be doing a predictions video on the day of the Oscars. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you.